Hi everyone, I wanted to post a video about your discussion board number 1 and number 2, and also just talk about a few things coming up. First of all, let me say, since I haven't touched base on video with you since the beginning of the semester, that I am thoroughly impressed with your discussion board posts. I have graded both of those now, so I had a little bit more time than I thought this morning, so I've been grading away, and so now you have feedback on both discussion board number 1, which I gave you last week, and today on discussion board number 2. So please make sure to go in and read your feedback. It does take me a long time to grade the posts, and I do read every single one and your response posts, and so it's important to me to give you some individualized feedback about things that are going well in your posts and ways that you can also strengthen your posts. The number one thing that I would stress that I'm seeing a little bit is just people posting and responding on the same day, which is going to reduce points. I know that in the land of online education, sometimes students are frustrated by that tactic of having you come in multiple times into the post or into the module to post, on different days. And but in terms of best practice, it is good for students to get in multiple times. Also, obviously, I post announcements every week, and I try to communicate with you on lots of different ways. And so it's just a best practice technique, but that is where some of you might be losing points unnecessarily. So my other suggestion to this, which I do see a few of you doing, is, basically posting on one day and turning around the next day and posting your response, which is fine. And sometimes it's good to put an alert on your phone, to get into a habit of always posting maybe on a, Monday and then responding on a Tuesday, whatever works for you. But that is a place where points are being lost. That's not really, necessary, really, if you are able to kind of get your schedule going and preempt being posting at the last minute. I also want to make a couple of points about these 5 discussion board posts and activities that you have throughout the semester. I'm not being super harsh in terms of grading, as long as you're addressing all the questions that I ask. So sometimes people are leaving out an element. So like within a question, I might ask you 2 things to address, and maybe you're picking up on one of those things but missing the other. So really what I'm going for in grading is I'm going for thoroughness of answering the questions. That's why I'm putting a word limit on that, so that a minimum, at least, you can certainly write more if you want, but at least a minimum, so that you're not posting super short posts. And also that it's just important that you address questions. Now, some of the questions I ask don't have right or wrong answers. It's simply, I want to see a level of critical thinking and analysis. And, my opinion might differ from yours. That doesn't mean that my opinion's right and yours is wrong. It may be like if you're confusing, for example, quantitative and qualitative concepts, then I might be making those points to you, helping you figure out how to firm up your posts and your analysis. But I do want to see analysis. That is really, really important. I don't want you to just reiterate concepts. I want you to take a concept and then dig deep into it and show me that you're thinking about it. But again, some of the questions I ask are not right or wrong answers. They're just your interpretation. So it depends on the question I've asked, obviously, but for most of the questions I ask in discussion boards, it's really that critical analysis I'm looking for, not a right or a wrong answer. I want to go back to discussion board number 1, which was about the film regarding the youth that were transgendered. I thought you guys did an excellent job taking the film seriously, trying to analyze it, looking for the themes. If you wrote a lot of wordy stuff and didn't do concepts, short statements like I asked, then I might have given you some feedback on that. A couple of things I've made some notes here, so that's why I'm looking down. I thought you did great, and I really appreciated those of you that sort of said, I didn't know a lot about this. hopefully you understand why this population is so perfect for qualitative research. And there are a few things to also remember just in general. Person first language. So that is something that, it'll come up in your other social work courses, but because my background is in disability and school social work, I feel like I need to make sure that I address this point. And I do this in all my classes. But essentially, when you talk about something, you don't, you use person first language. So instead of saying, gay kids or autistic kids, you would say a child with autism or a child who is gay. Instead of making that feature the identifying feature, if that makes sense. So person first language is just something that in social work we have to strive to do. And, I've been at this a long time, and when I'm lecturing in class or whatever, sometimes I make that mistake and, I group people by a label, and that's where we try to not do that. Another thing I would talk about is from this particular video was that I think that it was easy, and I sort of, it is a provocative video in the sense that, for example, with the father that was pretty negative about his child changing gender, that, it's really easy to be like, oh, I don't like that guy, or, maybe you agreed with him. I don't know. But remember, part of what my goal is with qualitative research is to get you to think about your biases and to try to put those at the door, which again is something we have to do in social work in general. It's our ethical code, and we have to remember to allow ourselves to be very open-minded about what we hear and to think, well, gosh, if I was working one-on-one with that father in the video, what would I do? Like, how would I approach that? Because if your biases are really strong and you think, boy, I don't like him or I don't like what he's saying, as researchers and as social workers, we have to put that aside and be like, tell me more, let's explore this more, where's this coming from? Because it's really easy in qualitative research when we're listening to the words and the statements of people for it to sort of evoke sometimes strong responses in us. Let's see. Another suggestion that I would have too is when I ask you in discussion boards to find a concept, particularly in discussion board number 1, because I asked for you to discuss triangulation specifically, I don't want you to choose that as the concept as well. So what I'm saying is, if I ask you a question like pick a concept from the text and explore it, but the very next question I'm asking you to address triangulation, I don't want you to use it both times. You need to find a different concept to address on your own, and then also address triangulation. So that's something to be careful about, and I gave people feedback on that if they use the same concept twice, because then you're just repeating yourself. So that's why you want to scan closely all the questions I'm asking and see what I'm specifically asking you for. Like if I say talk about symbolic interactionism, then you talk about that, but you would not use that concept again to answer another question if I'm asking you to find a different concept. But otherwise, I really also appreciate the fact that some of you are posting multiple response posts, and I know that takes time, and I'm not requiring more than one, but I do appreciate it because I think it keeps the conversation flowing. Then as far as discussion board number 2 with the article about mixed status, undocumented, and documented families, I thought you guys did a fantastic job analyzing this article. I used to use a different article about couples and the remote control, which is a great article, but it's kind of dated. And I think, probably personally because of my own research right now with the population of undocumented Latino families, it's really important to me that we continue to explore this because obviously it's an issue with DACA right now, with making decisions about policies that influence a lot of people's lives. The families I've been interviewing, it's gut-wrenching. What they're telling us. We're doing extensive interviews and analysis of the interviews. And so many of the themes that came up in this article, which I found this article doing my literature review before we started our study, I felt like it was a neat, tight well-stated article, not too long, not too cumbersome. I know reading research articles can be very difficult. Some are really confusing. And, I can say that because after having, I don't know how many research courses myself over the years and writing research articles and reading a lot of research articles, some are way better than others. So I'm pleased to see that overall you got the gist of the article, the importance of mixed methods, so seeing something from a quantitative and a qualitative lens, and being able to really understand the difference between those two types of research. That is imperative. It's imperative for your quizzes, because I will continue to ask questions about the differences in these kinds of research methods, but also for licensing exam, very common questions around what's the difference between quantitative and qualitative. So make sure that you really carefully review that, again, if you feel mixed up in what the differences are. But overall, I thought you did a fantastic job answering the questions that I asked. Remember again, so like when I ask you to pick a specific concept, make sure that you pick a concept and then you justify it against what you read in the article. I will almost always in every discussion board post ask you to pick something from the text to cite. And I will almost always ask you what kind of future research should be done. And when I ask that question, I want you to think about it and give a detailed answer, not just, well, I think future research should be done, because clearly I think it should, or I wouldn't be asking you that question. But so like what would you explore? It could be very specific, it could be very broad, but like what exactly would you be interested in? And the reason that I'm asking that question is because I want you to be thinking like a researcher. I want you to say, well, what was kind of left undone in this article? What did I not get that I'm curious about? Or maybe I like what was being stated, but I would like to hear it again in a different area or a different population. So just keep digging in that critical analysis piece. That's really, really important. But overall, I thought you answered the questions well. It is a pretty good research article from my viewpoint. Anyway, so read your feedback. And anyway, I thought you guys did great. Now, a couple of important notes just for future stuff. I have released the structured observation assignment has been released as far as the guidelines. So you can find that in the guidelines tab, guidelines for assignments tab. That's not due for a few weeks, but I think it would be good if you got in there and looked at the criterion, so that you have plenty of time to start working on that or thinking about it. I'll make some future comments about it, but I would say that a couple of important things is you're going to be acting as a complete observer. So you're going to pick a location. You're going to be, you're not going to interact with people. You're just going to observe. I do not want you to take photographs. You have to actually draw a sketch. You'll have to submit your sketch, your field notes of things you're observing, and then your actual write-up and report. So that'll be sort of your first major assignment, not coming due for several weeks, but still something to look at so that you can be looking at those requirements and, trying to kind of develop an understanding of where you might go. If you have questions about where you should go, obviously you can send me an email, but typical places, the mall, restaurant, a doctor's office, the library, coffee shops, there's lots of different places, the airports, lots of different places where you can go conduct an observation without it being too obvious that you're doing that. So I don't want you to pick a location where you wouldn't be safe or somebody might get upset with you. And then the other thing is your first quiz is coming due, and that is due this Thursday night. You have 2 chances to take it. Highest score prevails. I will look at the statistics and possibly drop items, and then I will make a video about that later on. I do want to stress that the study guide, the master study guide, is a guide, and that should help you. But don't rely only on the study guide. Some professors don't even give study guides, and I have sort of a love-hate relationship with study guides because I want to give at it as a courtesy so that it kind of helps point you in the direction of where the questions might be coming from. But on the other hand, if you get too narrow focused and tightly focused on that, then you might be missing other things in the chapter that you're still held accountable for. So use it as a guide. But anyway, so as far as that goes, I probably will stop talking because you're probably tired of listening to me by now, but I do hope that you watch these videos. Please pay attention to my weekly announcements and also read your feedback. But otherwise, I'm really impressed with the quality of the work that's being submitted to me. And, just keep up to date, keep looking at your links, listening to your PowerPoint, staying ahead of the game. Now is the time where things start coming due and tests and all these kinds of things. And I know it's stressful and it's hard to balance. And sometimes online classes can be the easiest thing to sort of push to the side. But it really is important that you stay up to date. And, email me if you have questions about assignments. Please look into assignments. I release everything at least 2 weeks in advance, so you have plenty of time to be looking at the assignments and looking at the requirements of discussion boards or assignments. And if you have questions about what I'm asking for, please feel free to email me. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great week. Happy Valentine's Day coming up, and I'm sure we all appreciate warmer weather in the future. Thanks for watching, and take care.